This week, we're taking a look at something called moral injury. It's been around for as long as people have engaged in combat. Examples can be found in the exploits of Gilgamesh, as well as the Iliad and the Odyssey. More recently, we saw an on-screen example of someone wrestling with moral injury in Cillian Murphy's portrayal of J. Robert Oppenheimer.
Mr. President, I feel that I have blood on my hands.
You think anyone in Hiroshima or Nagasaki gives a shit who built the bomb? They care who dropped it. I did.
In the 1940s, Dr. Oppenheimer did what his country asked him to do. Only once his work was actually put to use did he begin to feel the weight of the outcome of his actions. It's only relatively recently the term moral injury was given a name and started to be understood. Part of the reason for that is because less than 15% of enlisted military personnel ever see combat. That's according to research from the National Personnel Records Center. The percentage of commissioned officers to see combat is even smaller, but for those that do, it is often a life-altering event. While war's physical wounds are sometimes easier to see and treat, it's the trauma that can't be seen, often posing the biggest challenge to those affected and those charged with caring for them.
It wasn't until after I got home that things started occurring that raised my anxiousness level to the same degree that I experienced in combat.
While most of us are familiar with the term post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, fewer know about the diagnosis of moral injury. Dr. Carrie Tyne, an Air Force veteran and Associate Professor of Interdisciplinary Studies at the Joint Special Operations University, defines moral injury as the suffering when things go wrong and stakes are high. These are invisible wounds, but nonetheless, harm from something seen or done, or from something done to us. The effects challenge trust in others, ourselves, or both. Moral injuries result in emotions such as anger, guilt, shame, self-blame, and sorrow. The effects can remain dormant for weeks, months, years, or even decades. They will not remain dormant forever. The topic is gaining traction with mental health care providers and even inside the Special Forces community. At this year's SOF Week in Tampa, a panel of 4 experts spoke on the subject and how it's being addressed.
So what are we doing institutionally to prepare SOF operators and those who support them to not only survive in this environment, but to thrive? Not really enough, because I can't articulate a robust program that we have cobbled together to address the problem. So that in itself is a problem. We need an awareness of the complexity of the SOF environment.
Despite being some of the most well-trained and skilled service members in the world, there are inevitably things that aren't accounted for. Dr. Tyne says, like operating a piece of equipment, it takes training.
You have to teach people what they don't know, or they can be excused for not knowing what they need to know when the time comes, because you never took the time to teach them.
Part of the problem can be seen in a Venn diagram of PTSD and moral injury, showing how the symptoms of one or the other can overlap. Dr. Aaron McPhee, a professor of practice at the Perry Center for Hemispheric Defense Studies, says that can make diagnosing an issue even more difficult.
It's not a binary, oh wait, yes, I have moral injury, or no, I don't have moral injury. It's very difficult to sort of suss out, what is and isn't. And that confusion can sort of add to the distressing nature of it, and that is also part of the phenomenon.
Of course, a large part of the moral injury problem can be the very nature of the work done by special operators.
These moral codes, a lot of times they just seem like an unnecessary burden. They slow us down, they get in the way, and in worst case scenario, they could put us in harm's way and cost us our lives if we're paying attention to what we should or shouldn't be doing when we need to be acting. And so that is part of the complexity of the challenges facing SOF operators and those who support them.
In a piece for Brainline, an advocacy and information resource, Army veteran Tom Voss describes his experience with moral injury.
You don't really understand it while you're in the dangerous situation because you're in fight or flight, right? But when you come back from that experience of war or combat, you start to think, were we justified in our actions, right? What did I participate in? Am I a good person? Can I be forgiven? Will my community accept me, right? If they've ever found out what I participated in. So these are the questions that are associated with moral injury, which is grief, guilt, shame, real core wounds to the soul.
So where does change begin? Dr. Tyne says leadership is a key component, whether it's in training or in the actual battle space.
Help people understand that they have to protect what is good about themselves, because if they don't protect what's good about themselves, they may find it disappearing. People can take it from them. So understand, help them understand that aspect of it as well.
Another element, according to Dr. John Edgar Caterson, is understanding an individual's ownership of their experiences.
Dr. Mark Charles Eggerson, he basically is probably one of the leading virtual ethicists in the world. But he said individual perception is key. You cannot tell an individual how they feel or what the traumatic experience means to them. It is their experience, and they are the own expert of their own individual soul wounds. They will live with this the remainder of their days. That's just what it comes down to.
Unfortunately, for all that is known or starting to be understood about moral injury, suicides among those that have served continue at alarming rates. Depending on the factors considered, annual numbers of veterans committing suicide can vary from 17 to 44 lives lost every day. According to the National Institutes for Health, peer mentorship is one avenue for prevention.
So creating actually more intentional pathways for population groups that might not have access to mentors to get access to those mentors, and maybe then just like being a bit hands-off and letting it emerge organically. Only so much of this could be structured in a productive manner.
Ultimately, there are no easy answers when it comes to treating moral injury, but experts tell us it starts with information and access to resources. If you or someone you know is struggling with moral injury, you can find links to the resources on your screen in the story below.